Hello and welcome to this video. In this video we'll cover the first onboarding steps you can do when you start using Survalyzer, and especially if you have a new account with us. And we are happy to have you on board, and we want to make your first step as easy as possible, so we recorded this video to help you do that. And we will start over by quickly telling you the agenda for today. We will go through the tool. We give you a quick overview of where to find which part of the tool, but we will mainly focus on programming, creating a survey. So that will be the focus for today. And we will start by giving you a quick overview of the tool. And as you can see, we are already logged into the tool. And in here you can see the workspace overview. And if you have a new account, we usually create those 3 workspaces for you to help us in the onboarding process. And this usually contains out of the default workspace, the templates workspace, and the onboarding workspace. And let me quickly explain you what those 3 workspaces are used for. So the default workspace, that is actually the workspace you will program your live surveys in. So this will be your work area where you create your new surveys, where you set them live, and where you collect your data. The second one, the templates workspace, this has a different purpose. The templates workspace exists for us as Survalyzer support to be able to copy and paste templates that you can reuse for your surveys and understand certain functionalities. So in there we will create some surveys that should serve as an example for you to rebuild certain specific challenges you might have within your survey. So in the templates, you will find solutions for it. It's basically templates for solutions. And the last one, this is the onboarding workspace. This we will use especially in this onboarding phase now in the beginning. It's basically a playground where you can try things out, where we will do the onboarding so that we don't mix up your live surveys with just test surveys. So it's really just a playground for the onboarding phase. Later on, you can create as many workspaces as you need and as you see fit. In the end, it's basically like folders where you can save different surveys in based on whatever reason you have to split them into different workspaces. But for the onboarding phase, we usually work with those 3 workspaces. So let's jump into the onboarding workspace. This is what we will use today, and we will go through different steps. Now we will give you a quick overview of the tool, and when you enter a workspace, the first thing you see is actually the list of surveys that exist. As you can see right now, there are none. We don't have any surveys yet. We will create one in a second just to see how this table looks like. Then there is this samples page, and this actually gives you the list of your samples, whereas samples in Survalyzer understands as address lists, basically lists of email addresses, phone numbers, or similar that you can use to distribute your surveys to. We will cover that to some degree this time, but in more detail in another onboarding video, an onboarding session. And then we have the library. In the library, we will find files and media and messages. So files and media is actually where you manage your files. We will have a look at this at the end of the session. And then we have the messages area. And messages we will focus more on when we have a video and have an onboarding session about the distribution with Survalyzer. Then we will cover the messages in more detail. So let's go back to surveys. Let's create a survey. And then let's go and check what this table, the list of surveys, actually tells us. So we give this whole thing a name. And when you create a new survey and you give it a name, you can also select the default language. With default language, that means that is the main language you program your survey in. But in the end, and as I will show you later, a survey can have multiple languages. But let's have a look on the list of languages. So this is actually quite a long list. We in the meantime have over 60 possible languages to develop and program your surveys in. But usually, mainly it's German, English, or whatever your main language is. You choose that as default. It usually picks the language that you also have used for your UI. So when you're logged in and the profile is in German, it usually pre-selects German. if your user profile is in English, it pre-selects English. So that's usually how it works. But let's select English for now for this video, and let's press on Create. So now we are already in the survey. We will quickly jump out of it again, just to have a look at this survey list page, which I explained before. So here, this table shows you all surveys that exists within the workspace. And currently this is the only one, that's why this list has only one element. And we see certain different information that this table gives us. So the first thing, front of the table, is the ID. And then we have the survey name, which can be changed, by the way. It's something that is internal, so it can be your project ID, project number, project name, that you usually use to identify the survey, especially if you have multiple going on. Then we have the change date. This updates whenever you change the survey. This gets set to the current date. So it's always up to date. You can actually sort this table then later on also based on the change date. So you know what's the oldest and what's the newest surveys that you have. Then we have a status. Status column gives you the information if the survey currently collects data, live data. Then it's usually on, and then it's green. And currently that's off, which means it currently does not collect any data. No live data. And then you here have the answers column, and here usually there can be a number. And this number, if here is one, it indicates the number of completes that were done so far. And then we have some functionality on the right side. We have the pen button to go into the edit mode that we saw a few seconds ago. We have the possibility to duplicate any survey anytime. So we can create a copy of a survey, which just copies the questions and the texts, but not the data. Then we have a copy to. This one allows me actually to copy an existing survey and create a duplicate in another workspace. So if you have a template that you want to reuse for a new survey, you can actually use that template, press this button and copy it into your default workspace where you actually want to set it live, for example. Then we have an archive button. So there's always the possibility to keep this list clean by using the archive. So any archive survey does stop collecting data, but you can, by clicking this button, archive the survey, put it in the archive out of the live survey list, which keeps this list clean and keeps it a little bit easier to keep an overview. And next to it, we have the deletion. So where you can always, and you're always able to delete any existing survey, including its data. In the top navigation, and this is why I tell you that now, there you will also find a recycle bin. So whenever you deleted a survey, you will still have some time to recover that survey out of the recycle bin. Here you will also find the profile, where your personal profile is, where you can set your name, your phone number, your email address to the correct data, which is something that we always recommend doing. It helps the support team to help you better and might even be able to call you. Here you also find the help. And when you click on help, it actually, in a new tab, opens our education page that explains the page, the whole topic, the whole system. It helps you understanding how you have to use Survalyzer. Next to that, you will also find the notifications button. So whenever we have to inform you about new things, like this customer community, that is our latest notification, you will find it here, and it will tell you what is new. And next to that, you will find the Create Support Request button that allows you to create new support tickets. Like send us a question that we can answer. Our support team is always happy to help you. So that is the quick overview of the tool. And now we want to actually go deep into survey creation. We have a little survey prepared that we will create today. It has a little bit over 10 questions, 12 questions all in all, that we will create together in this video step by step. And there will be points in this video where we give you the opportunity to stop and just rebuild what we just did together, so that you have the chance to actually get to know the tool in detail. So let's start with the survey list. And with the survey build, we go in here and go step by step through survey creation. So we created the survey already, as we saw before, with the language in English. And this survey build, or the survey in itself in Survalyzer, is built on the typical process you develop your survey in. So as you can see on top in the navigation, you see that we have the build page where we actually program the survey, where we add all the questions that we want, all the logic that our survey needs. This is happening on this page. Then we have a design tab. In design, we actually change the design fitting for our company, for example. So we have predefined layouts that you can just select from, usually one in your CI/CD that you can select, and then the whole survey looks as you would expect. Then we have the distribute. This we will cover, as I said, in another video, where we'll actually send out that survey. We distribute it to our respondents. That's that step. And we also have the analyze step, which comes here, which is the last one. After we collected the data, we are able to analyze that data. This is also another onboarding video. So let's get back to the survey build area, the area where we actually create the survey. In here, we will have two areas of this build page, actually. We have a sidebar, which you will find here on the right side. This allows you actually to set settings. So whenever there are settings to be set, like question tags, like filterings, routings, you will find it in the sidebar. And the sidebar is very dynamic, so it changes depending on what you selected. We will cover that in a second. By default, when you open up a survey, you will see the survey settings. And we don't want to go super much into detail about this, but let's cover a few things here. One thing is the back button. So if you want your respondents to be able to go back and change settings, you don't need to change anything here. But if you don't want them to be able to go back, you can actually press on this button and then they are not able to see a back button. So it depends on what your preferences are, but you can adjust it for every survey. Then another setting we can quickly check is, for example, an access control. So you see there are areas that you can expand, like access control. And in here you will find multiple participation as another example. So with multiple participation, you are able to allow people to participate multiple times to your survey. So just not once, but multiple times. So for example, if it's not really a survey, but more like a form that people can fill out multiple times, then it absolutely makes sense to allow multiple participation in such a survey. And then we have another thing down below here, which is the end date, where we can actually set a definite date when our respondents should stop being able to fill out the survey. So we set a certain date and time. So when I select this and enable this, I can actually say that tomorrow at 9 o'clock it should stop. So that is another thing that we could do. We could just set it like that and then it behaves as expected. Good. So far, so good. About just a little bit about this one, but that I wanted to also additionally show you the languages area. So as I said before, a survey has a default language, but it can have multiple languages. So when the logic stands, when the whole survey is programmed, tested, and works, you can just add a second language whenever that's needed. So you just add a language. Let's say we add German in this case. We can do that at any time while we work with it. And now we can, for example, go to translate, and this allows us to translate the whole survey. So this is what we can do here. You are also able to download translation files, translate the file, and then upload it again and import the translations. So also that is possible. And as you could see earlier, we also have the availability of an AI that does the translation for you, which is not just a simple Google translation, but it's actually a smart translation, AI translation that is quality-wise very good. Another thing about languages, just a side note here, there are a lot of times in the sidebar you find those vertical 3 dots, and behind those vertical 3 dots usually more settings are hidden. So when you press on it, as you can see on English right now, you will find the possibility to adjust default texts of your survey that you can adjust to change it for this particular survey. And the next thing, after we covered this settings area on the sidebar, we will next talk a little bit about survey content. And this is the add content area where we can add whatever we need. And we will talk about a few question types for a second. The question types that you can find in add content are split in different categories. We have a basic area where we'll find some very simple elements that we can use in a survey, and we have advanced elements where we have more complex things we can do with it. And we will quickly talk about the simple things like a single response. We have a multiple response question, the typical radio buttons, checkbox areas, and other single value question types like a drop-down, which is the same as a single response, but with a drop-down select. We have a slider to select the value, which is a little bit more interactive, I could say. We have an open question where we can just ask for text and other answers, and similar types like date and email, where we have a predefined validation for the content of an open question. And we have a star scale, which we can use for typical star ratings. Then we have typical normal elements like text blocks, and we also have page breaks, and we have sections. And we will talk about sections and page breaks in a few minutes to get a little bit more in detail what the advantage of all those elements are. And as you can see, just to have a quick side note about sections before we start adding elements, when you create a new survey, you always start with an existing section, because all elements always have to be inside a section. You can have multiple sections, but you will never be able to have sections inside sections. So sections are always the highest level within your survey, and in those sections you can add elements. And we will start doing that by adding elements that we find in our survey that we want to create. So we have this template Word file that we use as a base for today's video and for the onboarding process. And we will start with the text block. So it tells us here the start page will start with a text block. And this is the text, so we will copy the text. And as it says here, we will add the text block. So adding, you can add any element by just clicking on those buttons and it will add it, as you can see. So now it's added. Let's add the text. So now we have this first text in here. And we can format it if we want. We can put it in the next row. This is what we can do here easily, quickly in the sidebar. And now the Word file tells us to add a page break. So now it actually makes sense to show you how otherwise you can add an element. So aside from clicking, you can actually use drag and drop. So you can use your mouse, click on it and move it to the position you want. So you can put it in any position. If you add elements later when the survey is already consisting of multiple elements, this enables you to just put it in whatever position you need this additional element. So we want to page break here below so that we actually have a next button after the text block that we show, a next button that is between this text block and whatever next element that is coming. Good. Let's add the next element, which is the first question we will actually enter and add. And the first question, that is a simple single choice, single response question. So let's copy the question and enter the single response question text in here and enter the choices. And one very nice thing is when I copy and paste actually multiple choices at once from the Word file, I can do that. So I copy all three now. I go into the first input of my choices. I can press Ctrl V to paste them, and immediately it enters in the additional choices. So now every choice that I don't need, I can delete. So that's the possibility that I can have here. And this way I had also already entered this question. Good. After this, we enter the next question. We enter an open question, which comes on the same page, which is the question on how old are you? So we enter and add an open question. That is the text, how old are you? So I don't expect a very big number here when I ask about the age. So I can actually use a small text field size. So you see the size reduces in this preview area. It gets smaller now. And I can say that I expect actually an integer number. So the response data type allows me to validate the content that is actually set in here. And if you go into this template survey that we have, it gives you some programming instructions. So it says, it said before already, it's a mandatory question. So we will change that in a second as well. But it tells you here, mandatory question, small text field. It should be a number. So that's what we selected, integer number. And it should be a value between 18 and 99. So let's do that. So we have a minimum value, which is 18, and a maximum value of 99. So now the system validates accordingly. So the respondent will not be able to enter a value that is below or higher than the minimum or maximum value. This is what this setting allows me to do. The mandatory question I can set by setting it to force response. So it forces the respondent to answer, otherwise the respondent cannot continue. And here we forgot that setting, so we select the question before and select force response. So now we have it up to date as the Word file instructs us to do it. And now we will add the third question. So I will enter a page break. You can quickly click on it. We have a page break in here. And the next thing, it is a multiple response question. So let's select this, copy the text, and a multiple response question we will add. We have here the question text, and here we have the choices, and again we can copy all of them at once, enter them, and it makes the breaks automatically, even adds additional choices if needed, so that all the choices that you copied are covered accordingly after you pasted them into the first input field. And this way makes it very, very easy to copy paste all choices at once if you have a new one. So this is again also a mandatory question. This is what we get here, and it tells us that we actually should have a semi-open text field for other. And this is what I explained to you a few minutes ago as well. We have the possibility to find additional settings after the 3 vertical dots. So when you click on here, the 3 vertical dots, you are able to set a setting which is called add text entry. And as soon as I enable that, you can see now in my preview there is now a text field that allows me to do that. So I will now remove those many underscores because they don't make sense anymore. And this allows the respondent to actually fill in some texts, whatever that is needed. So these are some of the additional settings that you can find. And in here you also find, for example, for multiple response questions, some other information like the variable suffix that can be adjusted, since each choice in a multiple response question is its own variable, as you know. But we also have possibilities to set data types, to force answers. So in this case, it actually makes sense that if somebody selects other, that we actually want to force him to answer that, to actually give us the information what other industry he works. So those are some of the additional settings. We have also here additional settings below about the range, arrangement, or appearances, which you can change, that changes the design of your question. So these are some of the settings you can find here. And now we are actually at a good position where we can quickly take a break, and you have the opportunity to build and rebuild what we just did yourself. So just press pause on the video and just rebuild what we just did together. So welcome back to Survalyzer build part 2 now. We will now continue with the next few questions of our onboarding survey that we will try to create together. And we start next with the question 4, but before we have question 4, the Word file instructs us to add a page break, which we will do now. So let's add a page break. And then let's add question 4. Have you shopped online in the past 12 months? Is there the question? And we will add this single response question. So let's add the question text, and then let's add the choices. Delete the unnecessary choices. And let's have a quick look about a few additional things in the sidebar. So we have here the question, have you shopped online in the past 12 months? And let's say we want to highlight that. So we have two different possibilities to do that. We can in here highlight that part of the word, just mark it. And for example, press Ctrl B to actually make it bold, or Ctrl I to make it italic. So this we can do in here. If you don't feel comfortable using shortcuts, you can always, when you enter one of those text fields, you see in the top right corner there's a word appearing. So now when I go into question text, you see rich text editor. You can click on this, and this actually allows you to go into the format area where you can do much more settings similar to Word. You can adjust font sizes, you can underline certain things, you can adjust where the text should be aligned, and much more. So this is just how to tell you where you can find it. You can play around with it, see what you will find in here. Just a side note here, usually a lot of font sizes, etc. is already handled in the layout, so it's not necessary to adjust font sizes or fonts, because that is handled in the layout. It's usually about making stuff bold, italic, underline, or maybe using, for example, listing, so that you have the bullet points for your list items, stuff like that. That makes sense to use this for, or when you want to add images. If you want to add images, you will also find it in the rich text editor. So this far for a side note on this particular point. Let's go next. We will add the next question, which is question 5. And then we also already see there is an interesting instruction here. We will now focus on in a second. So let's enter the next question. It's a multiple response question again. We can have this on the same page if we want. And let's copy paste the choices. And let's talk about those additional settings now that we will need. So first things first. I just copied it, so we'll go step by step onto the adjustment of the things that we just copied. First off, we have the question text, and we see there is some interesting instruction for this question. So this is a very easy one, multiple selection is possible, but there are sometimes a little bit more details that you want to give to the respondent to understand the question better. And this is what we have the hint text for. So let me quickly cut this out and enable the hint text, and let's paste it into the hint text area. And you see in the preview there is now a second line appearing, which is more or less in size. It's a little bit smaller font size wise, because it's just a hint text. It should just support the respondent to understand your question better. So whenever there's something like that, just put the question in the question text area, which is on top, and enter the hint text and additional text to support the respondent to explain the question into the hint text area. This will give you a lot of advantages also later on when you analyze the survey, that you actually only have the question text without additional explanation for your reports that you generate out of the system. And next, we have the choices. We pasted all those choices, so this is something we know already. We have other reasons. And this one, then we need the semi-open one, add text entry. Then, next thing, we see that we don't have a do not answer, no answer choice. And our survey says, I do not know should be NA. And this is something that we will also find in here. It's down here. It's the NA answer option. So we will actually copy this text here, paste it in here, and delete this one. So an NA answer, as you can see, it's a little bit parted from the top, is the possibility to not answer a question even if it's mandatory. So they will read the text, they will be asked if they didn't answer at all, but they have still the possibility to say no answer, NA. So maybe it's not applicable to them, or they don't want to answer, then they are able to do that with this type of choice. And it's used differently in an analytics area later on. So it is interesting to use NA for those cases. Good. Then we have another one which says, please randomize answers 1 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those one should be randomized in order when the respondent reaches this question. And for this, we have above here the setting, randomized choices. When I enable that, it's randomized. So NA will never be randomized by default, because the NA choice should always be at the end. This is what we would expect. But sometimes we have other ones that shouldn't be randomized. So in this case, this is the case for other reasons. It wouldn't make sense to have other reasons on top or somewhere in the middle. It should always be at the end of the list of elements to select from. And this is what we can do. As you see, when I actually enable randomized choices, you will see down here that an additional choice is actually coming, which is exclude from randomization. And now this element will not be randomized. All the other ones will be. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 5 will be randomized, but the 6 ones will always stay on the bottom. This is what we would expect, and this is how this in the end works in terms of randomization. So you can exclude any individual item from randomization. Similar thing, an additional setting. This is only possible for multiple response questions. That's the exclusive option, which actually deselects everything else as soon as this item is selected. So this is a so-called exclusive option. So let's go back into our Word file and have a look what information we get. So there we have one thing. If no is selected, we continue with question 5. Then finish the question with an URL forwarding, this information we get down here. And if yes, we continue with question 6. So, in other words, we only want to see question 5 if on question 4 the question is answered with no. Somebody did not shop online in the last 12 months. How do we achieve that? Whenever we want to hide or show a certain element, we can do that by applying a filter to that element. So in this particular case, we have question 5, why don't you buy online? And this one we only want to see if question 4 is answered with no. So we select question 5 and we press on Add Filter. This allows us to actually show and hide an element depending on a condition. So as you can see here, it already starts with show this element, and then we don't have anything. So let's click here. You can click on question, you can click everywhere, but let's click here and let's enter question. So we want to have a question. Question, have you shopped online in the last 12 months? Q4. Question 4, that's the one that this filter is based on. And then we can select that the selected value is equal to no. So this is what happens now. Have you shopped online in the 12th month is equal to no. That's what we would expect. So we save this one. And now you can actually see it in here in the preview that this element has a filter on top. So it tells you that this question is filtered, and it tells you that it's filtered based on have you shopped on in the last 12 months? No selected. Let's have a view on the preview, what actually happens and how this actually looks. So let's have a look at our survey that we created so far. And you can always do that. You can always click on the eye symbol, and this will open up the preview of your survey. You can test it. And it already tells you that this is a test link. It shows the latest survey changes. So let's click through our survey. We have this first text block that we created. It takes about 5 minutes. Okay, let's go next. We are male, 36 years old. And which of the industries you work on, technology and entertainment. And let's go next again. And now we have the question, have you shopped online in the past 12 months? Yes or no? Yes. Well, let's say I did not buy anything online. Oh, and suddenly this is what we conditioned, right? This is the filter we set on the question 5. We said, hey, only be visible when the respondent selected no. And then immediately this question gets entered. And now we can actually select from all those choices and continue. As soon as I press yes again, change my answer, this one is hidden again. So this is something that happens if you set a filter on an element that is on the same page. If you don't like the behavior of suddenly appearing questions when the choice is entered, you can put a page break in between. So that is a choice you always have. If you only want to see it on the next page, put a page break in between. Okay, so this is what happens. This is what filters are. And those filters are always available on certain different levels. We have it on element level. We also have filters, as you can see here, on choice level. So even individual choices can be hidden based on conditions or only shown under certain conditions. And we have the same thing, and now there comes the advantage of a section. When we add a section, we can also filter a whole section. So all the questions, all the elements that are inside of one of those sections can be hidden by using a filter. And by doing that, you can actually achieve all possible routings through your survey. But there are some cases where filtering can still be quite a little bit additional work. And for this, we have a URL forwarding, especially if we just want to screen out respondents or finish the survey for them, so that we don't have to filter all later coming elements based on the same condition. And for this, we have this forwarding element. So when I add a forwarding element after this, I can actually say I want this for them to be complete, and I want to forward everybody to an end page. So the survey for them ends here under a certain condition. So again, I set a filter, and this filtering, conditioning, showing and hiding of elements, this is something that follows through the whole programming logic of a survey. So we will do it again. We have this URL forwarding. We complete the survey in case somebody actually said no, same condition. So question Q4 is equal to no. So in this case, for every respondent that said no here, after he ended and answered those two questions, so after he presses on next, then this forwarding will be executed. So the forwarding element is actually an action element, and action elements create page breaks by default. So wherever an action element is there, it creates a page break and will be executed after the page break. So we will be safe that this question 5, is definitely be shown because it's on the same page, for example. And before the page break to the actual action item. And therefore, we can answer Q5 before the forwarding will be executed to the end of the survey. So those forwardings can only forward to the end of the survey or to an external URL. Forwardings are not there to jump within the survey. This is not the purpose of a forwarding. Good. And this is how you actually create filters. And I would say we will have the next practice round. We will stop the video here and give you the opportunity to actually create this survey so far for yourself at the question 4, question 5, and the forwarding element, and do the same steps that I did so that you are able to program that survey so far. Welcome back to Survalyzer Onboarding. We are now at part 3, and we will cover the next few elements that we want to add to our survey based on the sample survey that was sent to you in the Word file. And we will cover the questions up to question 7. That's the next thing we want to do. And let's do that together. And add a section. That is actually what it tells us next. Section list piping. So we will add that additional section. And let's quickly talk about sections as well. So what are sections actually? Sections are not page breaks, which is an important side note here. So you don't have to put each individual element in its own section. That's what we have page breaks for, to split them. Sections are more like chapters in your survey. It allows you to group them together, maybe in a senseful way, and categorize your survey, chapterize your survey. So this is a possibility. And since we can filter whole sections, it allows you to filter out a whole lot of elements at the same time. So sections have an additional simplification method for your routing in your survey. So this is one of the many things why we have sections, and sections can have names. So let's do that. We call it now list piping. And we will go step by step through the next few elements. And we will start with the question 6. Have you shopped in the following online shops within the last 12 months? More answers are possible. And this is a multiple response question. So we will enter that, multiple response question, enter the question text. More answers are possible. We will put this again in the hint text area. Good, that makes more sense. And now we copy and paste the choices once again. Tells us again that none of the above is NA, so we remove this one here and paste it in NA. And we randomize the choices. That's a mandatory question. That's what we want to have. This now makes sense. And if none of the above, none of the online shops are known, the interview should be over. We already know how that works. So if something like that happens, we end the interview. And for this, to just end the interview on a certain specific position, we can use a forwarding. So let's do that. Put it to complete. And again, we add a filter. We say here, question, which items to select, and then we create, we select NA, which is none of the above, is selected, save. So that way, none of the above selected sends them to the end page. After this, the next question in our Word file is the question 7, which should come after a page break, which we automatically actually created with this URL forwarding. The forwarding will create a page break automatically, and we will create question 7. Question 7 is a matrix question. So we will enter a matrix question. We add this one here. We will maybe take the second part as a hint text. Let's do that. Makes maybe more sense. And we again have the same choices, same list of items we will use here. Enter those. And then it says we have actually a scale from 1 to 6. So currently it's 4 items. Let's add more columns so that we have 6 columns. We can actually give it numbers. As it says from 1 to 6 it gets rated. Now we have those 6 items, and now we can use rating scales to help identify what we actually have written in here. You can basically copy that from the hint text now. So one has a very small selection of products, so let's enter it here. And the other one has a very large selection of products. And now this comes above here and helps the respondent to understand the scale of your choices. So this is one thing that we can do here to help respondents answer that question. But it tells us additionally something. First of all, it's mandatory, so that's something that we know. Put it to force response once again. And then only show online shops that were selected in question 6. And then it says randomize online stores. So we can randomize the rows. And they want us to add I cannot judge in the columns. So let's do first that. We add the NA. I cannot judge was the text that was expected. I cannot judge. So let's add that. I cannot judge is the NA that comes right to the side. Now it tells us only show the ones that were selected. So in this particular case, the way that we set it up by having a question with choices and having now another question with choices, we actually have to set the filter for each individual row. So let's do that. So I select the question before, the question 6, which one did you buy something in? Digitech is equal to checked, save. And now let's do it for the second one, and then we will fast forward. So again, question 6, Amazon in this case, because we are in the second row, is equal to checked, save. So now that we have fast forwarded, let me just set the last setting, and then we will quickly discuss it. Is checked, save. So now you can see that in here we will also find the filtering. So in the preview it tells us that the row is filtered, and when we hover it we see what the filter setting is. And this is how it works. So let's have a look how this actually looks in the preview. And since we now have 2 sections, it allows us to do something awesome in the preview. So let's have a look. Preview opens up of this survey. And now on top here, it allows me to actually jump to a section, which we will now do. We will jump to list piping. This is the second section that we created. And now that I select, let's say Digitech, Exlibris and Brack, this is the one we will select. And when I click next, I see exactly the ones that I selected. And now I can set my rating for those individual online shops. So this is what I can do. And this is how it sets up. And now you might say, this is a whole lot of work. And that is true. And if you have the expert license, then there is a much easier way to do it. So now you can actually see that this is a lot of work, as we discussed before. So there is an easier way. And to make that work, let's delete both questions and set it up once again. We will start with an empty section. Once again, let's delete all of those elements. And in this list piping, we actually enter now in the other under advanced that we have this list item. So if you are an expert user, you can use list items. So let's create a list. And lists are an advantage in such cases. And I will tell you why. So let's copy the list of items once again. So it's the same. So we start with question 6. So let's copy the list from question 6. Enter it in here. So now we have our list prepared with all the online shops. So let's also call the list online shops. And we can already, in this particular place where the list is defined, we can randomize the order of the list if we want that. So let's say we do that. Let's randomize the online shops at this position. The next thing we do, we enter again the question that we had before. It's question 6. Have you answered? Have you shopped in one of those shops? And it's again a multiple response question. So enter now. place this again in the in text. And now, as you can see, there is a button next to add answer choices, add choices from list. And if we do that, we can select the online shops and we use the list, and it actually shows us everything from this list online shops, which we then can use. It tells us to have an NA, right? So we will set this up again. None of the above. Is there the text we want to have? So let's put that in the NA. Enter the URL forwarding that we had before as well. Forwarding here goes to a complete if none of the above is selected. So this one we set up again. None of the above. So NA is checked. Save. And we want them to see the end page. Good. Then comes the next question. Now the interesting part about the lists is coming. So we copy the text again. We enter a metrics question. A metrics question. Enter this text. This one comes into the in text again. Good. And now on the rows, we can add rows from list. And now we have not only the list itself, but we have the question that uses the same list. So now we can select the question that used that list and say we only want to see the selection of the previous question, the question Q6. And now it creates all those elements and automatically sets the filter based on the selection. So this is where lists come in handy. It makes it very easy to work with them. So now we only have to enter our choices again. And 6. And we were known that there was an NA as well with I cannot judge, which we will enter. Good, and we have rating labels that we did before. Let's do that again as well. And has a very large selection of products. So this is what we will do. And now our metrics question using a list is done. And now this comes in handy once again. We will enter the next question, a single response question, which is Q8. And Q8 comes after a page break, which we'll enter in a second. But let's enter it. Personal favorite, which one? Then we have the list again. So now we add choices from list. And we based it, for example, on Q7. And only the ones that were selected 4, 5, and 6, for example. Not the slow ones, but the higher rated ones. Only those ones we want to enter to this list. And again, we have an NA. And it is I don't have a favorite. So this is how this generally would work. And now we have it based on the list. And as you can see with lists, it's way faster than having individual filters done manually on each column. So this is something, and this is an advantage that comes with the expert license that you can use. So we said we have a page break in between. And now it comes in handy that I can actually drag and drop any element. And we will do that now. Enter it in here, and now we can put it in between, and now in between those questions we have a page break. Sometimes when the survey is already developed for quite some time, it has a lot of questions, a lot of elements, the preview can get in the way of using drag and drop. And if that is the case, you can always change and collapse the preview. So we will hide the preview, and this now makes it easier to drag and drop elements in order in my survey. So this is something that you can always do, just as a side note, that you are able to do that when you hide the preview. So far so good. We came through to question 8, and this is as far as we want to go for this part. So please rebuild it according to your license. You can build it with lists if you have an expert license. So you start adding the list to the new section, and then using that list throughout the questions. If not, please create the questions using the individual filters for each individual row. So welcome back. We are almost at the end of our survey. We will now focus on a few next cool things that you can do in Survalyzer, and we will continue creating our survey. And let's go back to our Word file and let's have a look. So first off, it tells us skip question 9s if I don't have a favorite. It's just a personal information. And then we have question 9. Why is answer on question 8 your personal favorite? So now we will see that we can actually have text placeholders, and let's see how we can do that. So let's enter a page break on this position, and then add an open question, since we actually want to have an answer on why. And since we expect a little bit more text, we use a large one, a large open question, and the text is why is that your answer. So let's add that. It's a mandatory questions as always, so we enable that. And now we got the instruction to only show that under certain circumstances. Let's do that first. So it's obvious we use a filter again based on question 8. In case it's equal to NA. Then we don't want to show it, then we want to hide it. We hide this element. So we can change this, hide this element if it is NA selected. Then it's hidden. Good. And then we have here answer on Q8, answer from Q8. So how do we do that? So we can enter our rich text editor once again. Let's take this away. And then on top here, there is those 2 curly brackets. You can click on the 2 curly brackets, and then it shows you placeholders, available placeholders that you can use within your text. And in this case, we use a section, we use a question placeholder. So there is the second section, list piping. And in here we have the question, which of the following online shops is your personal favorite, which is Q8. And I can press on the position I want to have it in my text, and then press on the placeholder and it adds it. So let's have a look at that, and let's see how this looks. So we go again in the preview, and this hopefully you did before as well. Check if your survey runs as you want. So always use the preview to always check if it does what you expect. And we already jump again into list piping, skip the first section, select some shops. Let's rate them quickly. Some slower, some higher. Now I have the 3, so let's select one. And now as you can see, it replaced it with my selection from the last question. And since we are allowed to go back, let's go back, change it. You see that it adjusts. So you can actually change, and then it's another question. But this is something that is possible. You have placeholders for text parts, and you can work with text placeholders to adjust question text, personalize the survey based on that. And this is what we did just now, and this works as expected with the text placeholder. So this is a small thing that we can do on this particular position. So let's continue in the survey. The next one, we have a page break, and then we have question 10 and question 11. So let's add a page break. And then it tells us to have question 10. How much money do you spend on vacation? So let's enter an open question, copy the question text. It's a mandatory question. And it's a number question, since we expect them to spend some money and not some text. And let's enter a second question. It's again an open question. And how much of that money do you spend? So now we have 2 things again that we can do here. So how much money? And now we actually select that from the question below. Before, huh? So we go in here, question, section, then we have the money, question Q10. So here we use a placeholder again, Now we already see how much of the money you defined here do you spend on traveling to the holiday area. So for the flights, for driving by car, how do you get there? How much money do you spend for that? So this is what we can do. And this is one part. We have the placeholder already in place. But now it tells us the information must not be higher than the value in question 10. So this is what we want to do here. The value of question 11 cannot be greater than the value of question 10. How do we do that? For this, we have a validation element. Validation elements are there for plausibility checks, for something that is custom for your specific survey, which comes to the logic of it. So now you can say you cannot spend more for traveling to the holiday destination than you spend for the whole vacation. So this is our message. And now we have to define when do we see this validation message? When do we show this error message to the respondent? Can enable that. And again, we have, it's very similar. It's a filter again. Just say when does it actually pass? When it is okay. So what is the condition to hide the error message? This is basically what we define here. And now we have actually a calculation filter. It's actually important to have a calculation here. And now it cannot, so it is actually less than. Now we can write in here Q10 is less than Q11 is less than or equal to Q10. Save. So this is how this works. Let's see if it works, and let's have a look at the preview. We again jump to the list piping area, go to the section, click a few things through here. Let's rate them good. Select one. I like it. Next question. How much money do you spend? Let's say 1,000. And now you can see that it's also replaced here. I have 1,000 here. And let's say I want to spend 2,000. Oh, that's not possible, because this is more than I will spend for a whole destination, for the whole vacation. So 500, and now it's allowed. So I can compare two values in a plausibility check. And this is what the plausibility check is for. This allows us to show custom error messages under those circumstances. So far so good. Again, we come to the next practice area. You can stop the video again and continue rebuilding what we just discussed in the video. Feel free to go back, check the video, and just do what I did, and you will reach the same outcome. Now we are at the last part. We come to the area of adding images to your survey, and it tells us in our sample that we actually should create a new section images. So let's do that. Add a new section. Call it images. And there we just have one question. It's a multiple response question. Multiple response question. Multiple answers are possible. Put that in the hint text again. And then we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 images we need to add. And now we want to have a look how we actually do that. And for that, we actually go out of our survey and go to the file manager that I introduced in the very, very beginning. And let's talk about this. We are currently in the onboarding workspace, and you see you will find one folder per the workspaces that you have access to. So you have access to the default workspace, to the onboarding workspace and to the templates workspace. At least those workspaces will be listed here that you can use. But additionally, there is a shared area. The shared area is actually something that all workspaces have access to for images that everybody uses. Every workspace is able to use. And then we have those folders per workspace where you have access to from those workspaces. So when you go into the survey, and this will show you in a second, you will find that you can only find the shared folder and the individual workspace folder. We are in onboarding, so we go in here. And when we open up those folders, we see at least 3 additional folders usually. We have the documents folder, an images folder, and an audio video folder. And those folders are split because they are only allowing certain amount of data types. You see that here at the bottom. So this is a documents folder and only elements of type document are allowed in here. Then the images folder, only image types are allowed, and an audio video, only MP3 and MP4 is allowed to be uploaded in here. So we have those images, and let's upload those images by using upload files. So as you can see, I have prepared those images already. So we will upload those images into the images folder of the onboarding workspace. And now they do exist. So now we have them available to use in our survey. So let's go back into the survey that we created today together and go to that question that we entered last. Do you drive car of the following German car brands? And now we will add those elements in here. And when we open the rich text editor, as I did just now, let's show it again, clicking into the input field, in the top right corner, you will find rich text editor. You can click on that. It opens up the rich text editor. And in here we have the upload manager. And this is our friend here for using images. And now you see we have only access from here on to the shared and the onboarding area. So we go to onboarding, go to images, and we will find the images. So we have Audi first. Let's enter that. And below Audi, we also write Audi. Let's put it below. Save changes. And then next, we enter onboarding, images, BMW. What's next? BMW. And we will fast forward. So as you can see, we fast forwarded and it still does not look super nice. So let's do a simple change and change it to selectable labels, and it centers everything. And this makes it look way nicer. So now we have those elements below and it makes a much nicer view. So in Opel, there is still additional line break. So now it looks nice. And this is what you can do. And this is how you can enter images. And this is the last round now. You can basically, the video ends here. Thank you for watching. You can now try to rebuild that as always, but you don't need to pause the video since we are at the end. Feel free to send us any additional questions, especially to your responsible customer success manager who will help you reaching your goal of being able to create and program surveys with Survalyzer. So thank you for watching and have a nice day.